Welcome back. Now, the Palestinian NGOs Network and the Human Rights Organization Council have said that they condemned, in what they say the strongest terms, the decision of the United States to impose sanctions on Dr Francesca Albanese, the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the occupied Palestinian territories, against the background of Hague reports, which clearly reveal the crime of genocide and the grave and systematic violation committed by the Israeli occupation forces against the Palestinian people in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. Joining me now to discuss this, I'd like to welcome the Executive Director of the Bisan Centre for Research and Development, Ubai Aboudi. Ubai, it's good to have you, Ben. Shukran so much for joining us.
Thank you, and my salute to you and all the people of South Africa.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Ubai, I mean, looking at, of course, the sanctions that were placed by the US, it doesn't really come as a surprise, given that the companies that Dr. Francesca Albanese had mentioned in her report was quite damning, and of course, a lot of them being United States organizations.
Well, I think the economy of the occupation is not something new. I think this has been something that has been present from day one of the occupation. Israeli economy has actually benefited a lot from the occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. If you can remember, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development estimated that about 7 to 8% of the GDP of Israel comes from the West Bank alone. And this is a lot when talking about an advanced economy. And when you're talking about also the Gaza Strip and the benefits that they are reaping directly, I would say, from the territorial waters, from the gas that's found one of the biggest underground gas reservoirs in the world has been discovered. Natural liquid gas reservoirs have been discovered on the borders, on the maritime borders of Gaza. And when you are thinking about also the secondary benefits of the Israeli weapons that have been promoted globally, and some of these Israeli weapons are US weapons, to be honest about it. The US is not shying away from that also. So they are saying that when they are going to military fairs around the world, they are saying that those weapons are battle tested. And where are they battle tested? They are battle tested in the Gaza Strip against the civilians there and against the population. So this is a topic that is sensitive to many of the donors of President Trump, sensitive of many of his friends and affiliates. And this is also a major human rights violation that has kept the occupation going, not just as a settler colonial project, but also as an economic project.
Ubai, in the statement that was, of course, released by Bisan Centre, it says that, of course, the US decision sets a dangerous precedent, a direct and crude interference in the work of the United Nations system. But, I mean, for a lot of people, this doesn't really come much as a surprise, given that just last week he had hosted Benjamin Netanyahu, who himself has an ICC arrest warrant. So it kind of feels that when it comes to Israel and protecting the interests of that very nation, the United States is willing to go heaven and earth to make that happen.
Well, I think this is also a new level of violations. If you remember that the US was never a signatory to the Rome Statute that and has never applied or actually even admitted of the jurisdiction of the ICC, the International Criminal Court. The US has had actually a law that is called the Hague Invasion Law, where if any US official or any one of their allies is being persecuted or arrested and put on trial in the Hague in front of the ICC, that they would invade, that the Netherlands take control of it and release whatever person being charged. So when we are saying that the US has been rogue in sense of international law, I would say that the main violator of international law, international humanitarian law for the past not even 50 years, I think even from World War II, has been the United States. But this is a new level because the US is actually a signatory and a member of the United Nations. and they were a member of the United Nations Human Rights Council. They withdrew and got back several times. I don't know their status at this moment under President Trump, but they were actually one of the forces, I would say, that have driven the development of the UN since the end of World War II. So seeing the United States targeting a special rapporteur who is independent, who is doing scholarly work, and who is publishing reports, this is a new level of violations, of course. And these kinds of violations are, I would say, a precedent even for the United States. And they are basically saying that the system that the United States has helped establish has actually been the main force of establishing after World War II. It is now tearing it down with its own hands.
Ubai, one of the demands that, of course, Bisan has asked for, there's quite a number of them, but I want to go to the third one, calling on the UN Secretary General and the Human Rights Council to take a clear and public position condemning this U.S. interference and stressing the protection of the independence of special rapporteurs. What we have seen is that since the genocide has started, every organization of the United Nations has come under fire, who have also maybe been killed since October the 7th, 2023. When I look at the UN Secretary General, there's a lot of words, but less actions. And of course, the Security Council is the main body that can enforce either a ceasefire or hold certain organizations accountable. But do you really believe that this current UN Secretary General, given how things have unfolded since October the 7th, 2023, will actually not just, let's start off with, of course, a mild part to this, actually call out the US and condemn them for going ahead and putting sanctions on Dr. Albanese?
Secretary Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, I think should be more vocal in criticizing the United States. He's been dancing around this subject, and I understand his reasons, but I do not agree with his stance. He's feeling that the US, with all of the power that it's projecting, that it's becoming, or that it is actually the empire, the country with the biggest army around the world, the country that also hosts the headquarters of the United Nations, that they can make things very difficult, and they can even shut down the United Nations. I would say at least shut down their operations, the US, which would be a major blow. So I think Secretary Guterres is afraid of that and is being cautious in the way that he's moving forward. But I think that his stances should be more public, more direct, because I don't think that the current position of the US administration reflects the position of the United States people, of the American people. I think also the American people have been demonstrating they are facing a lot of repression, even from the current government, regarding their positions on Palestine. We have seen US citizens, US residents being arrested. You have seen attacks on education institutions in the US. So I think Secretary Guterres has a mandate and has an obligation to be much more vocal. And I think other countries that are joining forces within the Hague Group, which is being co-chaired by South Africa, have also an opportunity to push for a more just world and a world that relies more on international law and the respect of rights. So this is a moment, a historic moment, I would say. Either the entire international system, the UN system, crumbles under the bullying of the United States and its president, or the international system fights back and reclaims space again for human rights, diplomacy, and peace.
Ubai, we've just got 1 minute. Whatever happens, Dr. Francesca Albanese, in the eyes of Palestinians, has already got that heroine status given what she has done. So I just wanted to get an idea of how the Palestinian people are feeling towards it right now, given that she could have been in a sense of comfort, in a comfort zone where she just sits back, does her work, and says nothing. But the actions that she has taken really speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Well, for us, Dr. Albanese is a model for the perfect human, which is the human being that aligns with his or her humanity in spite of the challenges that they are facing. She is a candle that is blowing in the darkness and the darkest hours of the Palestinian people. She has been a voice for truth and justice. She has been speaking truth to power, and she has held, and she has not backed down, and she has held officials accountable, and she has rattled the empire. I think for many Palestinians, the biggest campaign that's now going on social media is that the entirety of the Palestinian people are nominating Dr. Albanese for the Nobel Peace Prize. We know that the Nobel Peace Prize is very politicized, but for us, she is one of the symbols of freedom for Palestine. So we deeply thank her for that, and we deeply appreciate her stance, as the stance of many brave people around the world, especially South Africa, its legal team, its government, the South African president that have stood and taken also the side of justice. We also remember and know that South Africa has suffered from US penalties, including cutting off vital programs like the HIV program for pregnant mothers. And all of this is not forgotten.
Ubai, always a pleasure having you on. Shukran so much for joining us.
Thank you, Faris.
That's Ubai Aboudi. He is the Executive Director of the Bisan Centre for Research and Development. We stay in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. I'm going to be talking to Jamal Jumba. Of course, a Palestinian-American man was beaten to death by settlers. This comes as the settler attacks continues to ramp up in the occupied West Bank. I'll have that conversation after the break.